Let's look at this question. A stockbroker monitored the prices of 8 banking stocks trading on NSE in the year 2019. The prices of the stocks on 31st December 2019 were called closing prices, while the prices of the stocks on 1st January 2019 were called opening prices. It was found that the price of each of the 8 shares rose by exactly 10%, 20%, 30%, or 40% between January 2019 and 31st December 2019. Also, the opening price on 1st January 2019 was an integral rupees for all marks. Okay, all stocks, sorry. So if the prices were integral and they have risen by 10% or 20% or 30% or 14%, the initial price has either been multiplied by 1.1 or it has been multiplied by 1.2 or it has been multiplied by 1.3 or it has been multiplied by 1.4. Whatever the initial price was, it has been multiplied by one of these numbers. If it has been multiplied by one of these numbers, the closing price has to be, if it is increased by 10%, the closing price has to be a multiple of 11. If it is multiplied by 1.2, the closing price has to be a multiple of 12. And if it is increased by 30%, the closing price has to be a multiple of 13. If it is increased by 40%, the closing price has to be a multiple of 14. This inferencing is critical because what this does is, see, 1680, is it divisible by 11? No. Is it divisible by 12? Well, yes, 168 is 12 into 14 anyway. So a 20% increase could have taken place. I will write it as probably a 20% increase. A 30% increase, no, it is not a multiple of 13. Or a 40% increase could have taken place. So A, something into 1.2 leads to 16800. Let me write it in a manner that is nice. Let me draw lines first. Okay, now this will be fine. See, if there was a 20% increase, then the initial price for A would have been 1400. If there was a 40% increase, the initial price would have been 1200. 12 into 1.4, 1200 into 1.4 gets me to 1680, or 1400 into 1.2 gets me to 1680. These are the two possibilities. It cannot have increased by 10% because this is not a multiple of 11. It could not have increased by 30 or 30% because this is not a multiple of 13. With that in mind, 182 is 13 into 14. So perhaps there is a 30% increase or a 40% increase. If there is a 30% increase, then the initial price must have been 1400. Or if there is a 40% increase, the initial price must have been 1300. Okay, next. For C, 15400, this is 11 into 14. So either a 10% increase where the initial price was 1400, or a 40% increase where the initial price was 1100. 1320, this is 12 into 11. 12 into 11. So either a 10% increase where the initial price was 1200, or a 20% increase where the initial price was 1100. 1092. Now this is where it gets tricky. 1092. 1092 is definitely a multiple of 13. 1001 plus 91. 1001 plus 91. So this is definitely a multiple of 13. So I can go 30% increase. Now I also have to check whether 1092 is divisible by 14. It is divisible by 14. I can see 092 minus 1 gets me to 91. And this is even. So it is divisible by 14 also. Is it divisible by 11? No. Is it divisible by 1.2 or 12? 1080 plus 12. Yes, this is also divisible by 20. So all these three cases are possible. But now, in order to get to the prices, 1092 into 5 by 6 I will have to do. Cancel. So I get 1. 49 gets me 8. 182 into 5. So 910. Or 1092 into 10 by 13. 8, 4, 840. Or 40% increase. 1092 into 5 by 7. Cancel this by 7. I get 1. 39 is 5. 39, 42 is 6. 156 into 5. So 1560, 780. These are the potential initial prices for E. 3 cases possible. 924, again fun. Because is this divisible by 12? 12 into 25 is 300. So 300, 300, 300 gets me to 900. In addition to that, I also have 24 extra. So wonderful. This is divisible by 12. So a 20% increase is possible. 30%. Is this divisible by 13? 910 plus 14. No. Is this divisible by 14? Divisible by 2. Is it divisible by 7? 910 plus 14. Yes. This is divisible by 14. So the potential initial prices I can also figure out. So 924 into 10 by 12. Cancel, cancel. I get 7 and 84. 70. So 770 here. And 440, 40% increase. 5. 924 into 5 by 7. Cancel, cancel. 132. So 32 into 5 is 160. 500. So 660. Which is also wonderful. Now I can see that this is also a multiple of 11. If I've got 660, this is also a multiple of 11. So a 10% increase from 840. This is also possible. Okay. Now for G, 1430 is 13 into 11. So 10 and 1300. 3 from 30% increase from 1100. This is also possible. 1560 is 12 into 13. 12 into 30. So 20% from 1300 or 30% from 1200. These are the possibilities of percentage increases and the initial prices based on 20% or 30% of whatever percent increase. Okay. Now, the table below shows the closing prices of each share on 31st. We've already got that. The stockbroker arranged the stocks in the descending order of their opening prices. If two or more stocks had the same price, then they were arranged in alphabetical order. The order of the stocks so arranged was by the broker was V, A, H, C, D, G, E, and finally F. Now for B, the potential prices are 1400 or 1300. For A, the initial potential prices are 1400 or 1200. For H, it is 1300 or 1200. For C, it is 1100 or 1400. For D, it is 1100 or 1200. For G, it is 1100 or 1300. For E, it is 910 or 840 or 780. And for F, it is 660 or 770 or 840. These are the possibilities. Okay. Now, there was also a tie breaking mechanism. If two or more stocks at the same opening price, they were arranged in alphabetical order. Now look at BNA. Look at BNA. If both of them had 1400, A would have gone on top. If both of them had 1400, A would have gone on top, which means, and if B had 1300 and A had 1400, then A would have gone on top. The fact that A is not going on top means A cannot be 1400. The opening price for A is necessarily 1200. And therefore, there has been a 40% increase in price of A. Okay. For H, because it is ranked lower than A, it cannot be 1300. It has to be 1200 priced initially. And therefore, there was a 30% rise in the prices of H. Now for C, it is ranked lower than H. It cannot be 1400. It has to be 1100 initially. So there has been a 40% rise in the price of C. That is also known. Now D also cannot be 1200. It has to be 1100. So there has been a 20% rise in the price of D. G, it cannot be 1300. It has to be 1100. G is 1100. So there has been a 30% rise in the prices of G. Okay. And now for E, everything is lower than E. Okay, 780. There can be multiple cases here. There can be multiple cases for okay. I'm checking. See, there at 910. I'm linking it this way. 910. If I have 910, it can go any of these three spots. If it is 840, it can go to any of these spots. But if it is 780, it can only go to 660 or 770. 840 cannot be obtained. So for E and F, I'll make a separate recording. E and F, the possible cases are 910, 660, 910, 770, and 910, 840. All are possible. 840 and 660, 840 and 770, and also 840 and 840. But for 780, the only possibilities are 660 and 770. There are 8 cases possible for ENF. And for GDCHA, I know the precise. And for B, either price is possible. Okay. Let's go through the individual questions. The opening price of stock C was greater than the opening price of how many other stocks? C was not higher than D, was not higher than G. It was greater than only the prices of E and F. So 2 is the answer. For how many values can the exact opening price be determined? It should be for how many stocks. I will change that in the test. For how many stocks can the exact opening price be determined? For A, H, C, D, G. For 5 stocks, the exact opening price can be determined. Okay. If X represents the sum of opening prices of stock B and stock E, how many values of X exist? B can take 2 values, E can take 3 values. So how many combinations? It will be 6 combinations. Now for 6 combinations to be valid, also one other thing I had to see, that the values here don't differ by 100. Because let's say the prices here had been 900, 800 and 700, then it would not have been 2 into 3. Then it would not have been 2 into 3. Then you would have had to see, and then 1400 and 1300 for B. And let's say E had these 3 potential initial starting points. Then 1400 plus 800 would have given you 2200, and 1300 plus 900 would have also given you 2200. So they would have not led to different summations. The fact that none of the values here for E differ by 100 Means every pairing that I make, I will get different values. The answer to question number 7 has to be 6. Last question. Which of the following can be the average of the opening prices of the given 8 stocks? Can be the average of the opening prices. Okay. So if I'm looking at average of the opening prices, one case will be maximum possible average that I can find, and the other case will be the minimum possible average that I can find. For maximum, B will be 1400. These are pretty much fixed. So 24 plus 33. 24 plus 33 adds up to 5700. 5700 is constant in either case, whether it is max or min. Here I will get 1400, then 910 for E and 840 for F. Here I'll get 1300 for B. And then minimum casings possible. 780 for E and 660 for F. Okay, so let us find out the summation. I get 0, I get 5. Here, what do I get? 9 plus 8 is 17, 17 plus 7 is 24, 24 plus 4 is 8. 2 carried over. So 8850. This is the maximum possible sum. Minimum possible sum will be 0, 4, 1 carried over. So 14 and 10, 4, 2 carried over. 8440 and 8850. So 8440 divided by how many stocks are there? 8, no? 8440 divided by 8 gets us to 1, 0, 5, 1, 0, 5, 5. This is the minimum possible case. Okay. And the maximum possible case will be 8850 by 8, which will get me to 1, 1, 0, 6.25. 1106.25. I hope I have done the summations appropriately, because right now all the possibilities seem valid. All the possibilities seem valid. Okay. So 1055 I can get. So I can mark this. See, this is possible. So this is out. And because this is higher than the maximum possible, this is out. Both of these exist. Both of these exist. But how do I rule out 1106? How I can rule out 1106 is, see, this is the maximum possible average. This is the maximum possible average. For this maximum possible average, the next average that can be obtained will be obtained when either B turns to 1300, or E turns to 840, or F turns to 720. Can you see, in any change that takes place, 840 turns to 770, not 660 turns to 770, sorry, or 880 turns to 770, any change that takes place. See, for average to fall down by 0.25, for average to fall down by 0.25 for 8 terms, summation should go down by 2. Is there any way in which summation can go down by 2? No. So this is also not an average that is achievable. The only acceptable achievable average is option C, 1055, when all the prices are minimum. And therefore, that is the answer to this question. That will be all for this set. Hopefully you learned something.